Now that practice is officially over at the Senior Bowl, it's time for Howie Roseman to make some decisions on how to commit to and who to let go on this Philadelphia Eagles roster in 2024.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Eagles fans. I'm Louis DiBiase, host of the Locked On Eagles podcast, Eagles expert also at Bleacher Report. He's Gino Camilleri, scouting director, Eagles analyst at Bleacher Report, and my co-host on today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. We discuss in-house decisions for Howie Roseman that he's got to make this offseason, who to get extended, who to get cut, what free agents should walk, who should get a new deal, all that and more. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. So Gino, the Senior Bowl is over. The game, of course, is Saturday, but the main evaluation process goes on Tuesday through Thursday for those 3 days of practice. Most of the NFL leaves Mobile, Alabama after that. And of course, Howie Roseman's been busy at work already with these decisions he's going to have to make that we're going to discuss today. But, you know, the Senior Bowl is a really big part of the draft evaluation process. And now comes free agency in a little over a month. And of course, we'll get into who they could sign across the league. But first, there's a lot of in-house decisions that he has to make this year. I think a lot more than last year regarding, you know, what guys that are still under contract that they need a new one, who he wants to commit to for the future, what pieces you thought were core guys you got to let go. He's got some tough calls to make.
That was the thing last season. It was, how is Howie Roseman going to keep this thing together? And
right.
I don't think that should be the message of what Howie Roseman is trying to do in this offseason. I think the message should be, how is Howie Roseman going to, let's go back and use a Howie Roseman quirk, retool this franchise to put it in a position to now, with two new coordinators in Vic Fangio, you now have Kellen Moore. You have a boatload of draft picks with all of these compensatory selections coming in as well. You have 3 picks in the top 53. You can get a whole bunch of cap space this offseason by doing a couple different things. Howie Roseman has to add to this core that he has in Jalen Hurts, DeVonta Smith, A.J. Brown, the young guys he has on that defensive line, all of the young pieces they invested in the young secondary, and not allow this window to close so fast. That's
right.
What they have to capitalize on. Yes, there was going to be decisions to be made on some of these older guys. We will figure out what's going on in the Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox saga coming up. You'll see guys like DeAndre Swift. He'll potentially have to renegotiate a new contract. Are you going to bring in new players to back up your guys that Suopeta are going to leave? Jack Driscoll, they could potentially be going to leave. There are a lot of little pieces that Howie has to retool, but at the same time, the guys that were starters last year, there were a lot of them that were replacement level players. I mean, especially at linebacker. How are you going to upgrade at that position? How are you going to retool and keep the foundation in place without having to blow this whole thing up once again? Because I think you're far from that. You're closer to competing than you are to completely rebuilding. But right now, those moves that he has to make, Lou, I look back at, let's take one offseason, for example, 2015. I know, well, no, it would have been 2016, right? Whenever they signed Brandon Brooks and Rodney McLeod. I think
2016.
2016, right? Those are two fundamental pieces that you brought in at the safety position, at guard. They were coming off of their first contracts. You brought them in and they put in, I mean, top level play to get you to a Super Bowl. Those are the type of moves that Howie Roseman has to make, right? Like, you have to find a player like that at linebacker, potentially find a player like that at cornerback. And if you can hit on one or two of those moves, Lou, next year's looking pretty good already.
For sure. And he's already got a lot of pieces on this roster. Before he does anything, making any of these decisions, 2 key things I want. You got to keep this core together that you already
Yes.
like hit on for the offense. And that's, of course, the big three. Jalen Hurts is under contract, A.J. Brown. But now you look at some of the young pieces on the offensive line and at receiver that need a deal. Like, before anything, give DeVonta Smith a new contract. He, in my opinion, is the most underrated receiver in football. I mean, even look at that last game he played in the playoffs. 8 catches for 148 yards when it felt like everybody else wasn't trying. You got to keep that big three together, and that's the first thing I want. He'll probably get $20+ million. I think the lowest guy that has a $20+ million deal is Chris Godwin. DeVonta will get probably something in the 21 to 23 a year range. That's the thing I want to happen next. You would still have 2 years of rookie control too on that contract to balance things out. Get DeVonta a new deal. Get Landon Dickerson a new extension. Get the young core that you hit on those new deals.
Yeah, that's the thing. To where we were saying you have to make these moves that could potentially be like Brandon Brooks and Rodney McLeod. You had to do that because you didn't hit on those positions.
Exactly.
Safety could very well be one of those positions, as well as linebacker. But the guys you have in house, I think that's one thing that Howie Roseman has always done a very good job on, is prioritizing the guys that he has in the building. If you look at that one season when he paid Jordan Mailata and Josh Sweat and Avonte Maddox, the whole class he paid within a matter of months.
And you do it early, Gino, and it's a team-friendly deal. And that's why with Smith and Dickerson, do it before they become pending free agents.
We always talk about Howie Roseman at times being proactive when it comes to the draft, but that being one of his hiccups, that he is a little bit more reactive at times. One thing he has always been proactive on is taking care of guys that are homegrown talent.
Yeah, that he knew he hit on for sure.
How many times has he paid Lane Johnson ahead of time, right? Lane Johnson should be, by all intents and purposes, the highest paid offensive lineman in football, if not one of the top 5. But what does Howie do so good, or so well rather? He gets out ahead of these contracts. And at the same time, that can help you out now, and it can help you out in the long run, because we're talking about potentially freeing up some money. One of those contracts we just mentioned in Avonte Maddox, you negotiate these 3 to 4 year deals with these guys. This is the prime time now. You can cycle through, get some of this old money off the books, bring in some new money, pay those contracts, alleviate some of that burden. Get James Bradberry off the books. Get some of these dead cap guys, these guys that have played their best days. Get them out of there and get these young guys that deserve the money to be paid for what they can do.
Yeah,
that's what they have to do. It's what you can do is what you are going to be paid for, not what you did.
And that's where it gets tricky with 2 guys on defense, though, that are under contract, but they're going to want to get paid more. It's Hassan Reddick and it's Josh Sweat. Hassan Reddick, too, you probably want to get an extension done if you're planning on keeping him long-term, because right now he has the highest cap hit in 2024 with a little over $21 million on the books, coming off another double-digit sack season.
21.8 to be exact.
Even though he's 29 years old, I'm still comfortable in paying Hassan Reddick $20+ a year. Like, he's established as one of the best pass rushers in the league. And I know he kind of tailored off at the end, but I think Matt Patricia was not using him right. I mean, he was dropping him back in coverage a lot. When it comes to Josh Sweat, though, that's where it gets tricky. Like, Sweat's gotten better pretty much every year that he's played, except for this year. He's only 26 years old. I mean, crazy physical ability. Had 6.5 sacks the first half of the year. But, I mean, he was just non-existent down the stretch, and he's making right now $13 million a year. Is he going to want 20+ as well? I don't know, even with the breakout 2022 season, if he's earned that kind of deal. So I do want Sweat back on an extension, Gino, but I will say it would depend on price more so for him than Reddick. Like, Reddick, I'm comfortable giving that kind of money to.
Well, the thing with Josh Sweat is his cap next year is going to be a little over $9 million.
Yeah.
And if you were to tag him as a post-June 1st cut, which I don't think they're going to cut him, he would only save around $4.3 million.
And you can't with Nolan Smith's unknown and Brandon Graham maybe on the outs. Yeah, you can't afford that. Yeah.
I think what you're going to have to do is give them both extensions, because one, you're going to move some of that Hassan Reddick money around, which will then open up some more money to go and then pay Josh Sweat, because like you said, that Hassan Reddick cap number right now, it's $21.87 million. I don't think you're going to cut him and save $16 million. I think he's too good of a player.
I agree.
don't think you even go down that avenue. I mean, bird in hand is better than two in the bush, or whatever that dumb saying is. Like, you got these two guys. I think even with the downswing that they had in that second half, the whole defense had a downswing in the second half. Don't let that take away from how good Josh Sweat has developed into one of the top underrated edge rushers in this league, and how good Hassan Reddick has been for you situationally. Those guys have to get paid. You're not going to create more holes in this foundation that we talked about.
It's a fair point.
Those are the guys you have to hold on to, Lou. Then we can solve, okay, what do we do at linebacker now? Do we go and pay Patrick Queen a bag? Do we take now this money because we have settled everything in-house, but those Band-Aid signings, we're not going to go down that avenue. We are going to give money to established guys, and the guys that we don't pay, we're going to go find somebody in the draft that can do it with 3 picks in the top 53.
For sure. And they have other decisions to make. A lot of pending free agents coming up this offseason. I think most of them should walk. Gino and I will evaluate who to keep and who to let go coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. You've got the 2024 Nissan Rogue. It's perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive. Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone, Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store. They're built right into your 12-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. And Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Armada, which will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 people in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, Nissan Armada, and go find your next big adventure. Shop at nissanusa.com today. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So, Gino, looking at the list of pending free agents for the Eagles this year in-house, I don't know. There are some guys that I would like back, but there's nobody that I'm saying adamantly. Like in segment 1, we're saying you have to pay DeVonta Smith. You got to give Landon Dickerson a new deal. You got to extend Hassan Reddick and most likely Josh Sweat. But when it comes to the free agents, even the ones that I would prefer to come back, DeAndre Swift, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. We'll see what happens with Jason Kelsey. That's a different scenario because he would be retiring.
Right.
Nobody else, even those guys, I'm not pounding the table for saying like they have to be back this year if they want to have success. Not anymore, at least.
I'm looking at the list, and it's like the one guy I would want back the most might be your punter and Braden Mann, who was
I thought of that too. They should bring him back.
Stretch between him and Zach Cunningham, and even Zach Cunningham, it's like that's
I want to upgrade at this point.
You want to upgrade, right? He was a solid player for what the Eagles
they
had.
needed. Yeah.
If you can't find anybody else, I think he'll be good for the time being, but you have to find an upgrade elsewhere.
Right.
And I'm with you, Lou. I think you don't go back to the well just because. If it didn't work, try and find an upgrade. And you look at even Zach Cunningham, 30 years old. Nicholas Morrow's 29. Shaq Leonard, 29. Roby, 32. Julio, 35.
These are all older,
outside of
Band-Aid
DeAndre,
contracts.
outside of Olamide Zacchaeus, Quez Watkins, Jack Stoll will probably get re-signed as an RFA, but I mean, not many of these UFAs. Heck, you go down the list: Rashad Penny, Justin Evans, Sean Bradley. Like, these guys are fringe level players that are replacement level guys that the Eagles have to look to upgrade. And I don't think you're going to pay any of these guys big money regardless, one, which will definitely give you an added bonus of what you can spend, one, in-house, and two, in the free agent market. And at the same time, it's going to open up a whole bunch of roster spots for you to potentially turn this thing around a lot quicker. Because if you went and just signed OZ and Quez again to be your 3 and 4, you know what you're going to get out of that. And bringing back these linebackers, you know what you're going to get out of that. Turn this roster over in areas where it deserves to be turned over. There's some like I'm saying, that are foundational, that you don't even think. A.J. Brown, turn your freaking brain on if you think about even thinking of wanting to trade that guy. You don't do it. But there are other players. I mean, heck, even DeAndre Swift, like at this rate, do you let him walk and get a compensatory selection next year?
It depends on the contract, and that's the thing.
It really does.
Swift.
He's the only one that it's like, I would want to get him in at a team-friendly rate. But at the same time, you're going to go down the avenue of it being a running back, and the Howie Roseman way of thinking, is he even worth it bringing back? There's not a surefire guy like last year where it's like, okay, there are multiple players where they have to bring them back, right? They have to bring back Darius Slay. They have to bring back 2 out of the 3 guys in that secondary.
There's none of them.
Like we said. No, there's not one guy where we would say
And you look at Swift, if he's going to get like a Miles Sanders type of deal on the open market, then let him go.
Let him walk.
Maybe, and again, Howie Roseman normally does not extend running backs, maybe because Josh Jacobs is in the open market, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard. Maybe that
down a little bit.
Maybe it waters it down a little bit, and you can get Swift back on a team-friendly deal. But even then, Howie Roseman might say, I can do better than even a team-friendly deal for DeAndre Swift. I can, for that price, go get a lower-level free agent like a Devin Singletary, and that's which I mentioned on the show the other day, and then go draft a kid. Or I can try to trade for my new DeAndre Swift. I don't know who that would be this year. There's not as many obvious options in that way, but maybe that's an idea. And maybe a trade for, one of the Steelers' pending free agent running backs in 2025, like Jaylen Warren. So I think Swift, I would like him back. He's very explosive. He had over 1,000 yards, was pretty efficient in a run offense that was struggling at times last year. But yeah, again, it's like with all of these guys, I have a floor that I'm willing, or a ceiling I'm willing to go to, and it's set there, and I wouldn't really budge because they're either at positions that aren't that valuable, like running back, or it's a Fletcher, Cox, Brandon Graham situation where, sure, I'll bring them back in a certain role for a certain price, but they can no longer be like Brandon Graham. I'd love him back for year 15. He really wants that. Gino, honestly, I don't want him as my 3rd or 4th defensive end in this rotation. If he's okay being the 4th or 5th guy and you bring in somebody else too, then I'm okay with it. But I don't think they can rely on those two the way they did this past year.
Well, Brandon Graham's technically on the books next year still. So
I thought it was a 1-year deal last year.
Over the cap currently has him in 2024 at a $7.93 million.
Interesting, because they extended him to a 1-year deal, so I'm not sure why it says that.
We can look into that a little bit more, but at the same time, I'm with you. Like, you've tried to get out from that. Regardless, you can't sit there and want to play the game of, we'll bring these guys back just to be nice. We'll bring these guys back just because
they can still play,
it's comfortable.
But I'm not bringing them back to be the role player they even planned for them last year.
How can you? How can you? Because the results warrant what you are going to pay them moving forward. Did Brandon Graham live up to what we thought he was going to be in that role? No.
I don't think so. He still has some juice, but not to the level of he needed to be last year their 3rd best defensive end because Nolan Smith was not ready. And this year, you hope Nolan's ready, but if that doesn't work out, Brandon Graham would have to be that again, and he's another year older. I want to separate. I think this is more of a conversation with Graham than Fletcher Cox.
Yes,
I would like Fletcher Cox back this year in a pretty big role, but it would have to be less. It would have to be more like 2022 than 2023. This year, because Jalen Carter hit that rookie wall, Jordan Davis didn't step up, and even Milton Williams was okay. Fletch had to kind of increase his workload compared to 2022. So I'd bring him back, but again, there's a certain way to do it if you're going to do it.
Oh, yeah, and I think I mentioned that the other day, that it's like you pay them what you would want them to warrant when it comes to a snaps percentage. Like Fletcher Cox, I'm only paying you $6 to $8 million because that's the amount of snaps I would want you to play. That's what I think you deserve right now, is like 35% of the snaps. At $6 to $8 million, I take that all day long. But Brandon Graham, I don't know. And both Spot Track and Over the Cap have him on the books for 2024.
Yeah, interesting.
So they're going to have to try and get out from that, because $7.93 million for Brandon Graham, I don't know. I'm not with that.
No, and outside of that, again, you look at, Marcus Mariota's a free agent. I'd let him go. Jack Driscoll, maybe you bring back as depth, but outside of that, a lot of those older free agents, Roby, Shaq Leonard, just clean house. You need this roster to get younger with these role players, just more productive too. A lot of those guys they were bringing in last year because Nakobe Dean got hurt and they were scrambling, and then Zach Cunningham got hurt and they were scrambling, and
100%.
Avonte Maddox went down. It's time, like you said, for these role players to give somebody else a chance to upgrade, right? Quez Watkins, like OZ, I want better than that at receiver.
Yeah, you want to LeBron James this roster right now, like at the deadline, send everybody out and bring in a whole different. Yeah, that's exactly.
Let Isaiah Thomas and D Wade go and bring in your Rodney Hood and Jordan Clarkson.
Get them the heck
because again,
out.
these are all role players. These are not players that are going to make or break your team. So it's not really a big deal either way.
And that's the discussions that happen in personnel buildings all the time. Like, I mean, can we replace players 31 through 53? This happens all the time.
The good news is, all of these free agents, even the ones we kind of want back, even DeAndre Swift, they're replaceable.
Oh, 100%, man. I mean, if you don't think you can find a 1,000-yard running back in the drop of a hat, come on.
No, I totally agree. There are some players that are under contract that they need to make decisions on, though, when it comes to their role this year, when it comes to the number on the books. We'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. They're not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply.
Today's episode of LOE is also brought to you by our friends over at DoorDash. I'm telling you right now, Lou, I am absolutely starving. And the first thing I am going to do when I get off of the show is go on my phone. I'm going to hit the DoorDash app because I'm going to get something delivered right to my house before I hit my workout. And you can do the same exact thing. Got the big game coming up. You don't want to worry about going to the grocery store. Heck, DoorDash can go to the grocery store for you. And if you're a first-time customer with DoorDash, all you have to do is download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCK23. And with that code, you'll get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. Like I said, you could get stuff from the grocery store. You could get pizza, wings, get your favorite subs, quite literally. Everything you can imagine is on DoorDash. You could sort by region in the world of what food you want to get. I love my Italian food. You always get your favorite Asian food as well. You could get that on DoorDash. Once again, use the code LOCK23 for 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. Thank you, DoorDash, for giving me some delicious food for lunch coming up.
All right, Gino, so the Eagles have some decisions to make when it comes to contracts on the defensive side of the football. Players that, again, we've already talked about who to extend, which free agents potentially to let walk in the open market, who to bring back between the likes of, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, DeAndre Swift, the list goes on. But there are some players that, I don't know, I think they should let walk. And one of them, or they should cut, honestly. And one of them is Kevin Byard, who was okay, but pretty disappointing compared to the expectations when they made a trade for him at the deadline. Byard, if they cut him, they would free up $13 million in space. Like, you could restructure and bring him back. Again, is he a solid player this year? Sure. And he has another whole summer to learn this Fangio defense. But I badly want to upgrade at safety, especially with the importance of it in this scheme. You've got Sidney Brown, who's a staple young player here. Reed Blankenship is a guy I'd rather play over Byard this year. And if I'm going to bring in a safety to replace one of them, I think Byard is that guy.
One thing on Brandon Graham, on both of these sites, they have his void numbers in there for next year. So that's why him and guys like Marcus Mariota, who I was confused, was a free agent as well. So, yes, I apologize to those who were also confused. I'm not perfect, I will admit it. But back to the point, like you said, Luke, Kevin Byard, you could free up post June 1st, $14 million.
So $14 million, yeah.
$14 million. You'd only take on a $346,000 dead cap hit to free him up. And I'm with you. I thought at the time the move made a whole bunch of sense.
Same.
But you're trying to get younger. the guys that you brought in, like you said, Sidney Brown, Reed Blankenship, they should be the starters moving forward. Sidney
the
Brown,
free agent class is great, by the way, Gino. There's a ton of
that's what I was going to hit on. We talk about how good this class is. We've mentioned, I think, 3 out of the last 4 shows that this class is the one that, if you go back 4 years ago, how much I love that safety group. This is that group coming up, and they could pay one of those guys. And Kevin Byard, he's going to turn 32 soon, and would it be okay to have him just to play in this defense that he knows he'll be able to come into a Vic Fangio system where he would probably be one of the smarter players in the defense? Yeah, it'd be awesome, but the Eagles have to get younger, and they have 2 promising players there at that position already. Sidney Brown, though, hopefully that ACL does heal quicker.
Yeah.
You would hate to see him be out into the season, but at the same time, I do think they're going to try and upgrade at safety because they missed on Justin Evans in free agency last year. They saw how much of a downfall it was from Marcus Epps and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to that group that they had last year. I'm with you. This group in free agency is too good not to pay. Freeing up $14 million for Kevin Byard. That's a Howie Roseman, how to free up cap space 101 move all day long.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's the financial part just makes too much sense. If you were going to have to eat $10 million in dead cap for Byard, fine, bring him back this year. With Blankenship's, undrafted rookie contract, Sidney Brown's rookie deal, that's fine. You can do that and still bring in another safety, but you can upgrade. It's a great class of free agents. I like the draft prospects too, and as you mentioned, you free up $14 million. So with James Bradberry, it's a little bit different. This guy I want out the door more than Byard, but you would have to eat $15 million in cap. Regardless, though, Gino, it's got to be time for a change. You've got to upgrade that spot opposite Darius Slay. And I know the financials don't make much sense. You could bring him back as a backup or have him compete for the job with a, day 1 or day 2 pick, or if you trade for somebody or a free agent. But I don't know. I think it's time to get 24 off the books.
The great thing about the NFL is they have these monopoly-like rules, and this post-June 1st cut designation is arguably the greatest thing of all time because, like you said, if you were to have to cut James Bradberry right now, you would have to eat $15 million in cap, and you wouldn't alleviate anything at the same time. So if you were to cut him post-June 1st, you would only have to eat $4.3 million in dead cap. So that is stomachable. And I'm with you at the same time. He has to get out the door. He is hitting late stage Leotis McKelvin when it comes to his long speed. There are younger players in the building who deserve more playing time. This class, you were down in Mobile, Lou. I'm sure there are guys on that field that you saw that can run and turn and have better hips than James Bradberry currently has. They're going to look to upgrade that way as well. They have to get younger at those positions. I think Slay is still going to be here. I think he fits what they're going to want to do moving forward. He could still run, and if that knee was only 30%, like he said, for most of the season, and he still performed pretty well, he comes back at least for 1 more year. With James Bradberry, I'm with you. He's somebody. You're not going to alleviate anything when it comes to the cap, but at the same time, it's going to save you in the future because it was a 3-year deal. You get out from that money now. You're only eating $4.3 million, and if you were to just get rid of that Kevin Byard contract like we just talked about, you'd be able to save $14 million, taking you from $20 million to $34 million in cap space in the blink of an eye.
You can afford to eat the
boatload of money for Howie Roseman. And that's before restructures of the guys that we were talking about with Landon and DeVonta and Hassan, where you're able to move this money down the road and get out from this heavy cap number right now. So Howie Roseman, he could get to $50 million and not even sweat about it.
He could also, and I don't know how I feel about this, but if he were to cut Avonte Maddox as a post-June 1st designation, you'd free up another $7 million.
Yep.
And Gino, that's a bigger question this year than ever because Avonte Maddox has been an elite slot corner when he plays, but the issue is every single year he's been in the league, he has not been able to stay healthy. So you could decide to move on. Me personally, I would still bring him back for another year. I don't know if I'm comfortable getting rid of him and relying on Isaiah Rodgers, who hasn't played after a full year of being suspended. I like the upside of Rodgers. I want to draft a corner, but I don't want to have to fill 2 new spots this year. And again, Avonte is young still. He is elite when he plays. Maybe give him 1 more shot at this thing to stay healthy. This year you can evaluate how Rodgers has come along after missing a year. They could free up some money with Avonte, but that decision, I would say in the secondary, I would bring back 29 and just give it 1 more look.
He is only going to be 29 years old. Funny, 29, golden birthday for him. But if you can save that, it's not going to help you too much in the future. His cap number is only $5 million on that void year next year. So I'm with you. It's one of those ones that if you were closer to, let's say, 11 or $14 million in cap once this offseason hit, like they have been in the last couple off seasons, yeah, that's one that you might want to look into. Right. But at the same time, let's say you want to go and try and even restructure his deal, you could save $4 million by restructuring his deal. So I think they would probably go that approach more than anything.
Unless, let's say you bring in, Kenny Moore's a free agent, right?
How much do they Eli Ricks, though, Lou? We forgot to mention him. They threw him in there in the slot all the time. But there's so many guys out there that everybody's replaceable in today's NFL.
Yeah, again, I would lean
Brown folks.
Yes, I do lean bringing back Avonte Maddox with a restructure, or just even on the deal he's at now. Again, like you said, you can free up so much money in other ways, and he is really good when he plays. But again, if you let's say they went after a Kenny Moore in the slot, then okay, then that would make sense to let Avonte go, because it's been unreliable. You've needed, as you mentioned, Eli Ricks and Sidney Brown to play in the wrong spots, and last year's CGJ and Josiah Scott. That's tough. Maddox has put them in a difficult situation over the years, but just for the money and the combination of what you have right now and the other needs, you're going to have to replace another boundary corner.
Yep.
I would decide to bring him back most likely in 2024, but a lot of decisions coming up.
One last thing on that, Lou, before we finish up here. If you were to make the move of getting rid of Byard, you were to get James Bradberry out of the building, that would leave you with Hassan Reddick at 30, Lane Johnson at 34, Jason Kelsey's gone, Darius Slay is 33. Those are the only guys over 30 that you truly would have on this roster, and it got younger really, really quick. Yeah, you probably bring back one of Brandon Graham or Fletcher Cox, but being the second oldest team in the NFL, it's going to go down to probably middle of the pack, and closer to that bottom third is where they need to be, truly. I know they won the Super Bowl with an older team, but it wasn't sustainable. And what was the thing we were harping on, Howie Roseman, over the last couple weeks when we were breaking it down? Sustainability. Get younger, pay the young guys now. Play the youth. I think just give me the youth. That's
the good news is, this time around, they have a lot of their core pieces already being younger players. Whereas that window in 2017, their core pieces, Jalen Carter, it was being overtaken by an older player at that spot, defensive tackle, or, at wide receiver, it was older. Right. All these, safety and corner were older. So, I think that's the one good news is with all these decisions they have to make is they have a young foundation, a much better head start than they did after that run after 2017. We'll continue to dive into all these decisions throughout the weeks right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast as the offseason rolls on. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading, thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.